Hey guys, how you doing today? Just getting off work, heading on home. Uh, what is banging around in my head today? Uh, Death cult. I've been saying that a lot on this channel. Death cult. Uh, seems to me that the capitalist class has, i.e., and when I say capitalist class, please understand, I'm going to define this, right? These people are members of a death cult who have sacrificed or surrendered themselves to an ideology of death that is destroying the ecosystem, destroying our culture, destroying our civil society. And if we don't do something about it, they will kill us and expect us to sacrifice our lives to this ideological structure. And COVID, in my view, has completely exposed all of this. It's absolutely, especially in the States. And we should be open and we should be talking about this in the media as often as we possibly can. COVID-19 has, without a doubt, revealed that we live ruled by this death cult that is actively expecting us to sacrifice ourselves to its systems of death. And it's expecting us to tolerate exchanging our entire life for some handheld gizmos and some toys that we're supposed to just accept and we're just supposed to accept this all as normal. The States, of course, because of its complete and utter dedication to its failed ideology, and has expanded and made this COVID-19 crisis not only worse for themselves, but worse for the entire planet. We're not going to be able to just put this COVID-19 crisis behind us because there's this group of death cultists who have seized control of the society and is saying to us, the strong will survive. He is saying to us, many of you will die, and that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. The old arguments, right? And you can see this. It's beginning to happen, right? Because as COVID is beginning to normalize and as the numbers are beginning to dip, people are bracing for a second wave. People are bracing for another spike up. There's a lot of talk here in Canada that we're sending our kids back to school. Is that going to be a contributing factor? Is it wise? Lots of debate going back and forth. And are we going to be able to get through this without having any kind of second lockdown, which would be absolutely devastating to corporate capitalism? It could, in fact, if we experience a lockdown through Christmas, that could be the end of corporate capitalism as we know it. The corporate capitalist system relies on not only the exploitation of the working class, but the exploitation of the consumers, right? It needs to cut both ways. And if it doesn't have the opportunity to do both, it ceases to exist. And that could very well happen if we experience a second lockdown through Christmas. Which is why I think our government is kind of bracing for something like that. Which is why I think passing a basic income is very wise for a government to do, because the threat of that, just the fact that it's within the realm of possibility, means that we should have a basic income and it should be in place before Christmas. Because this is not going to go away, right? Because of the mishandling of the United States, because of its dedication to the death cult ideology, this crisis can't actually go away because it's being spread around with so much efficacy. And the arguments that are being used Now, as this is settling down, as things are sort of calming down, the arguments that are being used are the same arguments that were being used pre-COVID. But now, because we've all gone through this COVID-19 experience, instead of being within the bounds of reasonable conversation, it sounds exactly what it is, which is extremist religious fundamentalism. It's a extremist ideology, an ideology of death and abandonment, an ideology that literally says, well, if your grandparents die, it's because they were weak, and the strong shall survive, right? America is revealing itself to be what it always was, which is a fascist state. The line that I like to use is, when the victims are non-white or foreigners, it's called capitalism, but when the victims are white citizens, it's called fascism. Capitalism always was fascism. Fascism and capitalism are the same thing. Boy, do I ever need to do more research on that so I can really talk about it. But that's my prevailing hypothesis. And so you have figures like Kevin O'Leary, right? Like, he still goes on TV and he still espouses the same psychopathic death cult nonsense that he always did. Poverty is great because it incentivizes people to blah blah blah. I should be specific, not just push it aside. Poverty is good. It's good that children don't eat. It's good that people don't have shelter. It's good that the capitalist class exploits the working class because it incentivizes people to better themselves. That's the argument. Of course, it's a total fraud. It doesn't incentivize people to better themselves. It incentivizes them to more efficiently sell themselves to the rich, which is exactly what Kevin O'Leary wants. He wants slaves. He wants people to live in slavery. And this is what the white supremacist society that we live in has always done, right? Like, you enslave one population in order to get free labor out of them, and then you commit a genocide against another population in order to get free land out of them. So the irony being that capitalists are always complaining about government handouts when they're historically capitalist governments thrive on free handouts. They just extract it from other cultures, whether it be the black community who endured slavery, or the First Nations society which endured genocide. This is the beating heart of the death cult, right? Like, the death cult requires human sacrifice to survive. If everybody was left alone and we didn't brutalize anyone or steal anything from anyone, everyone's needs were taken care of, their food and their shelter, then the system we would live in would not be called capitalism, because capitalism wouldn't exist in such a system. Capitalism requires human sacrifice. It requires it. And if it can't get direct sacrifice through slavery and genocide, then it will start to enslave its own citizens, and it will start to steal their lives away from them in order to fuel this relentless drive towards destruction. Because this is the thing that no capitalist can actually answer for me, which is, like, why are we working so hard? What is it we are progressing towards? Why are we rushing at this incredible pace? What's the rush? And there's two answers that I can see, which make any sense. Answer one: we're rushing so that we can pile numbers into billionaires' accounts so we can decide which billionaire wins the game. Because that's all it is to capitalists and conservatives generally, is a game, right? Your life is just a game to them. You're just a pawn in a large game that they are playing. They don't care about your life. They care about winning the game. And that's the difference between a conservative and even a liberal, I think. A liberal understands that people are not playing a game. People are living their lives, right? And they are involved in politics to protect their lives. Whereas a conservative is in politics to just win a game, right? They don't actually care about your life. They don't even pretend to care about your life, right? Like they care about money for themselves. The second answer to this question of where are we rushing, why are we going so fast, is more existential, which is there are two forces that exist on this plane of reality. There's the force of creation, right, which is associated with love, right? We make love, we have sex, we propagate, we reproduce, we create. Humans do this naturally. This is a natural part of being alive, is this drive to create something, to put something where there was nothing before. It's built into the human experience. Every human wants to do it in their own way, on their own scale. But there is also, conversely, the drive to destruction, that we also seek to tear down, to rip apart, to destroy, to reform. So it's not always evil, like it's not always a negative, like a bad thing to dismantle. If you dismantle unjust systems, for example, if you destroy unjust systems, that's actually quite good. But it's also an internal drive inside of us. This is why kids are so contradictory to their parents, right? They want to naturally pressure, and they want to naturally put, they want to see where that boundary is, and if that boundary is serious, or if that boundary has just been made up and is totally false. And right now our society is in a real boundary pushing kind of period, and is really realizing that a lot of these boundaries that have been erected are completely false, and that the structure that we live in is actually designed, instead of to be a force of creation to uplift humanity, it's actually designed to destroy humanity and to destroy itself in the process. Because what it is we live under is a complete, like, if it was an intelligent being, it would be a demon. I don't think that there is any, I understand that that's like a theological way of thinking, or like an existential way of thinking, but to me that's not a debate, right? Like if this system we were living in was a creature, it would be absolutely demonic. It would not have any aspirations outside of consuming everything before it for its own satisfaction, for its own immediate satisfaction. It's not even doing it for its own survival. It's doing it out of a sense of pleasure of destruction, right? That the Germans have a word for this, of deriving pleasure from someone else's misery, Schadenfreude. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And and this system has clearly begun to edge humans into this place where they are taking pleasure from other people's misery. To me, this is where the cancel culture comes from. To me, this is where this drive to destroy someone's life for some one comment they made on Twitter one time comes from, is this desire to take pleasure in their destruction, to take glee in their destruction and their misery. The death cult that we currently live under, that here in Canada we are actually beginning to dismantle. But in the States, they are, like, the States is on this whole other existential journey that is going to lead them into basic territory, right? Like here in Canada, and it looks like throughout Europe and all this kind of stuff, it looks like we're looking at each other and having a discussion. And we are figuring things out through our political mechanisms that are still functioning and still work. In the States, I think things are going to get pretty tribal. I think things are going to regress to a pretty barbaric state before any kind of anything that could be considered positive could come out of it. And unfortunately for the States, it's going to be a period of extraordinary isolationism. We can't interact with them. They're plague-ridden, for God's sakes. Anyway, I'm running out of time. These videos are so short now that YouTube is not letting me post if they're very long. So I think I'll just close by saying, like, we need to continue pressuring, and we need to continue fighting, and we need to continue standing in solidarity, and we need to continue telling the truth about what this system is. That the capitalists have not been able to come up with any further arguments as their system has actively collapsed in front of them. They are attempting to use the same arguments that they did before the COVID crisis, and they sound like psychopaths. And we should be calling them out for that. I don't think that we should be letting people like Kevin O'Leary or people like Jamie Dimon to stand up and use the same old tired answers without calling them sociopaths and psychopaths to their face, because that's what they are, and that's what and if they want to not be called that, then they should stop sounding exactly like that. You don't condemn people to poverty and destruction and death and get to walk away from the table without being called a sociopath at the very least, which Kevin O'Leary for sure is. Anyway, I'm out of time. I hope you guys are having fun out there. I hope you're making love and having drinks and smoking weed and high-fiving your neighbor and having some laughs and getting to know your coworkers, organizing with your coworkers. I don't think that the only way we're going to get anything done is if we grab each other's hands and look at these sociopathic death cultists and say, go fuck yourselves. It really is going to take that. All right. Good luck out there, guys.